Black screen. A single cursor blinks in silence, as if the day has started before any human presence has entered it. So 7:42. AM appears on screen. Soft morning light fills a spotless home office, calm and efficient, but strangely empty of life. An untouched coffee sits beside the keyboard. Sparse typing echoes through a room with no voices, footsteps, laughter, or interruptions. You have not spoken out loud to another human being in 9 hours, and the sentence lands before you can argue with it. Slack is green, notifications are orderly, and your workday looks healthy on paper. Everything visible says the system is functioning. Commits are pushed, messages answered, deadlines met. By every metric your employer can see, you are performing well. Then around 3 in the afternoon, you notice what is missing. No laughter, no interruption. No surprise conversation breaking the day. Every interaction today was scheduled, agenda-driven, and compressed. Nothing casual, low stakes, or spontaneous was allowed to exist. A 25-minute Zoom starts 3 minutes late, ends with, "I'll let you go," and the dark screen leaves the room even quieter. This is not classic burnout. It is something quieter, flatter, and easier to miss while your work keeps getting done. Then the data interrupts the feeling. A graph rises sharply. Hours spent alone are up 58% for remote workers. A second line climbs higher still. Days with zero in-person contact jump 72%. Isolation is now measurable, not anecdotal. The source matters too. 588,000 workers, published in Science in June 2026. This is social scale evidence. The finding was not just that remote workers felt lonelier in a vague emotional way. They were physically spending much more time alone. Their odds of going an entire day without a single face-to-face interaction rose dramatically. Whole days now pass without embodied contact. Then comes the twist. Forcing everyone back to the office does not simply solve the problem. Sometimes it backfires. The intuitive reaction feels obvious. If people are isolated, put everyone back in the same building and call it fixed. 5-day mandates promise hallways, lunch tables, and quick conversations again. On the surface, it sounds like common sense. But the research pushes back hard on that logic. The real issue is not simply where the desk is located. What disappeared was smaller and more ordinary. Low-stakes human contact so routine nobody noticed it was holding them together. A hallway joke used to release mental tension instantly, with no calendar invite, no agenda, and no effort beyond being near someone. Shared coffee, quick desk questions, and brief glances across a room quietly stitched ordinary workdays into something socially steady. On one side, home looks efficient and controlled. On the other, the office looks messier, louder, and unmistakably more alive. The contradiction fits in one frame. Productivity remains high while well-being quietly declines, somewhere the visible metrics never reach. The same silence that protects deep work also removes the small social signals that used to help regulate your mood. Your brain once absorbed dozens of tiny cues each day. Without them, the world starts feeling thinner and less textured. You barely notice those moments when they existed. You notice them only afterward, when their absence turns into emotional weight. The change is subtle but real. Mood grows heavier, expression flattens, and familiar people begin to feel strangely far away. That is the silent trade of remote work. Obvious gains in focus and flexibility, hidden losses in ordinary human connection. It stays hidden because productivity is visible. Output is measurable, trackable, reviewable, and easy for organizations to reward. Tickets close, code ships, decks get delivered. Managers can point to concrete proof and say the system is working. Well-being behaves differently. It erodes underneath the dashboard, invisible to reporting systems, even while every status light stays green. On track, completed, above target. None of those labels can capture the slow thinning of a person's inner life. The study estimated remote work may account for roughly 1/3 of the broader rise in mental distress among workers. Remote employees also used mental health services more often, suggesting flexibility and strain were rising at the same time. Prescription support rose too, showing that the cost was not merely symbolic. It was appearing in real treatment patterns. The pattern was sharpest for people who live alone, where home and workplace collapse into one continuous private space. If you are single, remote, and high performing, the data places you in the highest risk group even while you appear successful. Your manager may not see it, your teammates may not see it, even you may only register a dull, nameless flatness. At that point, the conclusion feels obvious. Bring everyone back, recreate contact by policy, and assume proximity will solve it. But this is where the story turns again. A blunt return to office mandate does not cure slow relational erosion. Badge swipes and office towers may signal compliance, but resignation letters reveal another kind of damage unfolding underneath. When companies force 5 days back, they often punish the workers with the most freedom and leverage to leave. Many strong performers have already rebuilt life around flexibility. No commute, arranged childcare, and budgets calibrated to remote work. A heavy-handed mandate does not feel like reconnection. To many people, it feels like control being taken back without consent. That pressure shrinks the talent pool because the most mobile employees are usually the first ones able to walk away. Culture can erode even after return if people come back resentful, tired, and still not meaningfully connected to one another. So the office is not the villain, and home is not the villain. The real design failure lives somewhere else. We designed remote work for output, availability, and efficiency, then forgot to design it for ordinary human connection. Look at the calendar, stand-ups, reviews, one-on-ones, planning. Every block has a purpose, and none of them are casual. What is missing becomes visible by absence. No coffee, no walk, no pause, no room for accidental conversation. Modern work kept formal collaboration intact, but stripped away informal contact, treating the social glue like disposable background noise. That glue mattered because it regulated mood in tiny doses all day long. Human steadiness often comes from repetition, not intensity. So the researchers do not call for a sweeping mandate. They point instead toward a more targeted personal architecture. The answer is not a giant social event or a quarterly offsite. It is smaller, more frequent, and easier to repeat. Engineer one low-stakes, in-person interaction into your week. The key is simple. It should have no agenda. Not networking coffee, not strategic relationship building, not a status meeting disguised with a latte and a friendlier tone. The goal is not extraction or performance. The goal is simply being near another person without having to justify why. A walking meeting can help if there is no deck, no screen, and no pressure turning presence back into output. A co-working session can help too, when the point is shared atmosphere. 2 laptops, 1 table, and less isolation. A lunch works best when work stays off the table, because relief often begins when nobody needs anything from you. The study suggests mood is shaped less by big social highs and more by regular, ordinary contact repeated across time. In offices, these tiny moments happen by accident. In remote life, they usually have to happen by design. That can feel awkward at first, because intention is replacing spontaneity. But intention is now the bridge that gets you there. The intervention sounds almost too small to matter, which is exactly why it is realistic enough to repeat each week. Picture a Tuesday walk at 12:30, 45 minutes outside, no presentation, no updates, no pretext beyond company. 2 people stroll, 1 laughs, and neither checks a dashboard. The value here is social nourishment, not measurable output. What matters is not whether the interaction feels deep or memorable. It matters that it breaks a long run of solitude. Even brief shared space can remind your nervous system that the world still contains other bodies, voices, and rhythms. This is not nostalgia for old office life. It is a practical correction to an environment optimized too narrowly for output. Remote work still offers real advantages: less commuting, more autonomy, and deeper focus. The point is not to erase them. The point is to name the trade honestly. Freedom expanded, ambient human contact shrank, and that loss carries consequences. Because the loss is quiet, many people blame themselves for feeling flat, as if motivation alone were the missing ingredient. The research offers a kinder reading. Your environment may be underfeeding a basic social need that performance metrics cannot detect. That reframe matters because shame blocks solutions. A design problem can be redesigned. Personal failure feels much harder to move. So ask a practical question. Where is the longest stretch of your week without face-to-face contact? Find that gap first. Maybe it runs from Tuesday through Thursday. Maybe every afternoon from 1 to 6 feels acoustically empty and untouched. Map that stretch honestly instead of idealizing your routine. The hidden cost usually sits inside the most normal-looking hours. Then place one thing inside that gap. One walk, one coffee, one shared desk, one recurring lunch. Start with one. Do not over-design it. Once it becomes too optimized, too useful, or too complicated, it starts losing the point. What helps is how little this moment demands from you. Just show up, stay nearby, and let low stakes do their work. It should not feel like another task disguised as friendliness, another calendar block, or another obligation pretending to be relief. The restorative part is simple proximity. Another person beside you, with no agenda, no ask, and nothing to prove. In real life, it may look almost forgettable. Sitting together, walking slowly, sharing air. That ordinariness is exactly the point. We return to the same home office, same desk, same morning light, same hush. But now a second chair quietly enters the frame. That empty chair changes the room because it suggests intention, a place where connection could happen, not just work. We sit with the empty space long enough to notice what was missing all along was not output, but companionship. A single keyboard click breaks the quiet. Work goes on, but the room no longer feels emotionally sealed shut. Then, from off-screen, a door opens and someone says, "Hey." A tiny human arrival suddenly feels enormous. The point is not a dramatic transformation. It is how little contact can change the texture of an otherwise silent day. You have not spoken to another human being out loud in 9 hours. The sentence returns, unchanged in wording. But now it sounds less like a personal habit and more like evidence of a design flaw hiding inside routine. Your output can stay strong while your social baseline weakens. Performance and connection are not the same metric. Remote work did not break because people were weak. It overlooked the invisible job ordinary human contact was doing. Return to office mandates can restore location, but they cannot force the low-stakes connection that actually regulates mood. A better response is small, deliberate, repeatable contact that fits real life. Quiet design usually beats grand symbolic fixes. This week, find the longest quiet stretch in your routine and name it before it starts feeling normal again. Then interrupt that stretch once with a walk, a coffee, or a shared desk. Let simple proximity be enough. If your work system was built for output, redesign one small corner of your week for connection instead. Fade to black. Let the silence stay long enough to recognize yourself in it, and long enough to choose one next step.